Alright, now I've got an image called G006 brush, and it's centered. Now the two things I want to do with it, I want to put a frame around it, so I'm going to click the frame, and I'm now going to select the type of frame. All I've done now is saying I want a frame, and you notice how it kind of puts a little thicker line around here. That represents a frame. If I unclick it, notice it's now just a very thin, straight, very thin line. Okay, I'm going to click on the frame, coming up here to frames, and I'll select the frame I want. Now let me think. Based on the background that I'm using, I think a gold frame will probably work. So I select, actually no, selecting what I want to be, in this case I know what the picture is, and you'll see in a minute, I'm going to select the rainbow. It's a very good combination. I'm selecting the rainbow. Alright, now I also want to put a drop shadow on this, and I find that the number 2 drop shadows seem to work the best for me. You may like to use a higher or lower number. I'm going to just use number 2 right now. And about 2 or 3 clicks gives me the drop shadow I'm looking for. Now I've got everything I want in here. Now I'm going to come over and I'm going to save the element. Okay. Now it changes from yellow to this normal looking gray, which is where you want to be when you're all finished. In fact, you want to be after you've handled each element. Now if I want to remember what I've been doing here, I can right click on the mouse. I'm going to press the right mouse button. As I press it, I'm going to be holding it over different areas of this picture. And look up here and see what happens. I'll press the right mouse button, and you see the word 3 lights appears. That's my background. As I come over the image itself, the brush itself, it gives me the name of the brush. And over here it also tells me that I have a frame around that brush called rainbow. Now it doesn't tell you anything about the drop shadow, but that's obvious because you can see that here. Okay, also we were talking about this number up here. You'll notice we're dealing with 2 elements. We're dealing with the background and we're dealing with the brush itself. So it tells you there are 2 elements. If you were just curious about these buttons over here, we can go ahead and push this check button, and this will tell you how much memory you have. Also, it tells you what all your elements are. It tells you everything that you've got in your project, and it tells you that it has enough memory to handle this. If you had some other programs running and forgot to turn them off, and you were depleting the system of memory, you would get an indication here that you needed more memory. It's low memory. Or if you tried to put too many elements into this, maybe you overloaded it, you might also get that message. So that's one of the reasons for checking it. But after a while, you'll get used to knowing just how much memory you can handle. And I used to check this an awful lot when I first started. I don't think I've checked it now in a couple of years after using it. All right, we are now ready to save this element. Now I know we spent a lot of time on this, and I said one of the reasons I use this program is because it's fast, but I wanted to show you everything here. Once we actually start using it, you'll see how fast this program will work. All right, what I want to do now is I want to save this as a Framestore. So I come down here to this box, and I press the Add button, which again opens up another requester. And I could have preset that. Right now, I didn't make one called, I don't think I made one for this particular project, so let's just leave it in Homes. And I'm going to put in sample. We're just going to call this sample 1. I'll give you a little hint. Let me finish what I'm doing. Sample 1. The Framestore light came up. If it didn't come up, I would have pressed it. You do have a choice between saving it as a Framestore or saving it as an RGB. The choice is yours, but we're working in Framestore, so I select the Framestore, and then I answer OK. Now, I mentioned I was going to give you, and then you'll notice down here, now you have a rendering list. That's what this calls for, a rendering list, and over here it tells you whether it's a Framestore or and RGB, and in this case we saved it as a Framestore. This is also an indication if you meant to save it as a Framestore and the RGB light comes on, then you realized you pressed the wrong button when you went to save it. Okay, and this tells you the path that you're saving it to. Now I mentioned I was going to give you a little hint. When you're working with video scrapbooks, you're really working a lot with numbers. It's very helpful to try to keep things in chronological order. Brush number G006 is going to become G006 in my project. In other words, it's picture number 6. The G designated a particular grouping that I was using. But the point is, if I save this and gave it the name of G006, when I put all my Framestores together, when I meld them with the Framestores that I already have made, it will just fall into the right place, and I won't have to bother jumping around trying to put the brushes in one place and the Framestores in another. In other words, the ones that I've made from Composite Studio. Again, I'll show you that a little later. Okay, let's go to the next step. A very good idea is to get in the habit of saving the list. This will save everything we've done. In other words, it doesn't just save this image, it saves the information about the image, so that if for any reason the program locked up or crashed, the computer crashed, you did something that caused the whole system to go down on you, all of the work you put in here would not be lost. So we'll go over here and we'll save the list, and again we can put that in a directory. I usually try to keep it in the same directory I'm working in. One of the things I do is I call it, the list I save, I just call it list, L-I-S-T, and I know whenever I see that's connected with this program and it's my list file. Again, the reason being is that this program does not tell you you're about to overwrite anything. So I could come in here and save a Framestore by mistake on top of the list, call it list by mistake, and it would overwrite this particular file. But a nice feature is I can just constantly come in here and save my list. It doesn't tell me that I'm going to overwrite it. It just does that. All right, now we have one complete picture ready. But let me now show you the steps it actually takes when you're working with a lot of images. I clear this so I can start on the next one. And now I'm just going to kind of go through this at the speed I normally go through, and I'll kind of talk you through it. First, I'm going to grab my background. So I'll grab blue sky, make it full screen, save it. Come over here to brushes, grab the next brush, save it, pull it in, I should say, size it, center it, give it one more adjustment to center it, put a frame around it, click on the drop shadow, bring it down. That's just a little too much. Pick my frame, picking silver, done, and I save it. I'm going to add it, and we're going to call that sample 2, and I'm going to save it. Again, I tend to save after every one I work in. It's just a habit I've been getting into. All right, I'm done. I now did it. What I just did in probably less than a minute is I selected a background, I selected an image, I put a frame around it, I put a drop shadow, I defined the frame I'm going to use, and then I added it to my list of Framestores, gave it a name, saved it, and saved the whole list. Did the whole thing in, what did it take, about maybe 45 seconds? All right, now let's see what happens once you have a whole list of these. You can just keep going. You can build 10, 20, as many as you want. It doesn't really matter. There's no limit, and it doesn't use up memory. The memory is only used per item. Let me show you another one that's kind of nice. Let's just jump into one of these. We've already saved it. Let's clear this. Let's go into a template. Let's say you want to have 3 pictures on the screen at one time. Click that on. This is set up for 3 photographs or 3 pictures, 3 images. In this case, would not use a brush here because the brush would only fit in a part of the image. because of the shape of the brush. These are designed for normal size, 752 by 480 images. So we'll go to an image. Now these are just my backgrounds, so they're not going to make fantastic looking pictures, but just to show you what we're doing here, I've selected 3 of these. I reset this. Now what I do is I press one of these croutons, I believe they're called, and then I cycle through the image until I get the one that I want. I have bricks, daisies, and bird. Now why don't we make that bird, and we'll save that element. Now let's go to the next one. Now again, a nice feature is that when you press the next one, it actually cycles to the next image. The only thing is that bird was at the end of my list, so my next image was nothing. So I cycle through that, and we start with bricks. I'll show you how this works on the next one. Okay, I'm not going to change the size. I'm not going to do anything more. It's already set up to be beveled, drop shadowed. They're pre-sized. So I will save that. And then I'm going to come down to the last one. Now watch, there's the name bricks up here. Watch what happens when I press this last crouton. Well, it fooled me. Okay, there's daisies. All right, you noticed it was none, and then when I pressed it, daisies came up. The next one in a row. It didn't come up with bricks, didn't come up with bird. It just keeps cycling through to the next one. Okay, we'll save that.